Welcome to the Discourse Analyzer AI Toolkit, where articles come alive. You're listening to the audio version of our article. For the full text and an interactive experience, check out the link in the description below. Interact with any selection using our AI assistant to enhance your understanding. Let's explore.
Critical race theory methodologies within discourse analysis. The exploration of language through critical discourse analysis, CDA, within the framework of critical race theory, CRT, offers a profound insight into the power dynamics of race and racism perpetuated through discourse. This approach critically examines how language functions as a tool of power, shaping societal structures and perpetuating racial inequalities. Similarly, the ethnography of communication, another vital methodology in CRT, provides a lens to observe and analyze the racial implications embedded in everyday communications. By combining detailed textual and contextual analysis with ethnographic insights, these methodologies reveal how racialized discourses shape and are shaped by broader societal contexts, offering critical insights into the mechanisms of racialization and potential pathways towards racial justice and equity. 1. Critical Discourse Analysis, CDA. Critical Discourse Analysis, CDA, within the context of critical race theory, CRT, is a methodological approach that focuses on analyzing texts and talks to uncover and challenge power dynamics, especially those related to race and racism. CDA's central premise is that language is not merely a tool for communication but also an instrument of power that can perpetuate social inequalities. In CRT, CDA is employed to dissect how racialized discourses influence and are influenced by broader societal structures and power relations. 1. Key features of critical discourse analysis in CRT. Analyzing language and power. Power structures. CDA seeks to uncover how language constructs, maintains, and disseminates power within societies. It pays particular attention to how discourse is used to enforce and normalize racial hierarchies and inequities. Role of language in racism. The analysis focuses on how racial ideologies are embedded and reproduced through language in various settings such as media, law, education, and everyday interactions. Methodological approaches in CDA. Textual analysis. This involves a detailed examination of the language used in written and spoken texts. Analysts look at word choice, syntax, and framing to understand how texts might subtly, or overtly, convey racist ideologies or reinforce stereotypes. Contextual analysis. CDA does not analyze texts in isolation but considers the broader sociopolitical context in which texts are produced and received. This contextual understanding is crucial for interpreting how discourses relate to wider racial power dynamics. Focus on ideology. Revealing hidden ideologies. A primary goal of CDA in CRT is to reveal the hidden ideologies that underpin apparently neutral or natural discourses. This involves showing how these discourses serve particular racial interests and sustain specific power relations. Deconstructing dominant narratives. CDA challenges dominant societal narratives that often marginalize or oppress racial minorities. By deconstructing these narratives, CDA helps expose the mechanisms through which racial inequalities are crafted and sustained. 2. Applications of CDA in CRT. Media analysis. Analyzing racial representation. CDA is used to dissect how racial groups are portrayed in the media. This includes studying news reports, movies, television shows, and advertising to understand how these mediums construct racial identities and either challenge or perpetuate racial stereotypes. Policy and legal discourse. Examining policy documents. CDA can analyze policy documents and public statements to understand how racial assumptions are embedded in policies. This includes looking at legislation related to immigration, education, and law enforcement. Legal texts. In legal discourse, CDA examines how legal language, such as in court rulings or legal arguments, perpetuates or challenges racial discrimination. This can reveal biases in how laws are interpreted and applied. Educational materials. Curriculum analysis. CDA is employed to analyze educational materials to see how race and history are portrayed. This helps identify biases in how educational content is framed and what narratives are emphasized or omitted. Critical discourse analysis within critical race theory offers a powerful method for examining and challenging the ways in which race-related power dynamics are maintained and normalized in society through language. By focusing on the intersections of language, power, and race, CDA provides critical insights into the subtle mechanisms of racialization and the perpetuation of racial inequalities. This methodology not only aids in the scholarly understanding of racial discourses but also supports broader efforts towards racial justice and equity. 2. Ethnography of communication. Ethnography of communication within the framework of critical race theory, CRT, methodologies in discourse analysis is an insightful approach that employs ethnographic methods to explore and understand the racial implications embedded in everyday communications. This method emphasizes observing, recording, and analyzing the interactions and practices within communities to grasp how racial identities and hierarchies are constructed and maintained through language and communication. 1. Ethnography of communication in CRT. Foundation and focus. Cultural patterns of speaking. Ethnography of communication, initially developed by Del Himes, focuses on the ways communities use language within specific cultural contexts. Within CRT, this approach is utilized to dissect how racial and ethnic groups encode their experiences and identities in their communication patterns. Understanding racial dynamics. It aims to understand how racial implications are interwoven within the verbal and nonverbal communication of different groups, providing deep insights into the subtleties of racial interactions. Methodological approaches. Participant observation. A key method in ethnography of communication involves the researcher immersing themselves in the community or context being studied to observe and participate in everyday communications. This immersion allows for a nuanced understanding of how racial dynamics are expressed and perceived in naturalistic settings. In-depth interviews and group discussions. Conducting in-depth interviews and facilitating group discussions can help uncover the community members' perspectives on race and communication. These methods allow individuals to articulate their experiences and perceptions that might not be observable in everyday interactions. Analyzing communication practices. Speech codes and narratives. The ethnography of communication looks at the specific codes, norms, and rules that govern how members of a community speak and interact. For CRT, this analysis can reveal how racial norms and power structures are reproduced or contested through these codes. Contextual and situational analysis. Understanding the context and specific situations in which communication occurs is crucial. This analysis helps identify the conditions under which racial issues are more likely to be expressed or suppressed. 2. Applications of ethnography of communication in CRT. Educational settings. Language use in classrooms. Observing and analyzing communication in educational settings can highlight how racial identities are constructed and contested among students and teachers. This includes how language is used to enforce or challenge racial stereotypes and authority structures. Workplace interactions. Corporate communication dynamics. Examining communication in workplaces can reveal the racial undertones in professional interactions, such as hiring practices, team meetings, and performance evaluations. This analysis can help identify subtle forms of racial discrimination or support mechanisms. Community and public spaces. Public narratives and interaction. Analyzing communication in public spaces or during community events can expose how racial identities are publicly negotiated and how communities uphold or resist racial norms through public discourse. The ethnography of communication within critical race theory offers a powerful lens for exploring the complexities of race in everyday interactions. By focusing on how communication constructs and reflects racial identities and inequalities, this approach provides valuable insights that can inform broader societal discussions and interventions aimed at addressing racial disparities. This methodology underscores the importance of context, culture, and communication in shaping and understanding racial dynamics in various social environments. Conclusion. Critical discourse analysis and the ethnography of communication, as methodologies within critical race theory, serve as essential tools for dissecting the intricate ways in which race and power are interwoven in society. CDA focuses on unveiling the hidden ideologies in language that support racial hierarchies, while ethnography of communication explores how these dynamics are enacted in everyday interactions. Together, they provide a comprehensive understanding of how racial inequalities are both constructed and challenged within various social spheres. These insights not only deepen scholarly understandings but also support practical efforts towards achieving racial equity, underscoring the importance of language in both sustaining and combating racial inequalities. Frequently asked questions. What is critical discourse analysis, CDA? Within critical race theory, CRT, critical discourse analysis, CDA, within CRT is a methodological approach that examines how discourse, language use in social contexts, perpetuates systems of power and inequality, particularly racial hierarchies. It focuses on revealing the role of language in sustaining and challenging racism within societal structures. How does CDA help in understanding racial dynamics? CDA analyzes the ways language constructs social realities and identities, emphasizing how power relations, including racial dominance and subordination, are embedded in everyday language. It helps reveal the implicit biases and ideologies that underpin racial discussions in media, politics, law, and other fields. What is the ethnography of communication in the context of CRT? The ethnography of communication is a methodological framework that studies how communication practices within specific communities convey, reinforce, or contest social norms, including those related to race. It involves detailed observations of how people use language in their cultural and social environments to express racial identities and power relations. How does the ethnography of communication contribute to racial analysis? By closely observing and analyzing everyday communications, this approach provides insights into how racial norms and inequalities are maintained or challenged in everyday interactions. It captures the nuances of how race is discussed or enacted in various social settings, offering a deeper understanding of the lived experiences of racial dynamics. What are the practical applications of using CDA and ethnography of communication in CRT? These methodologies are used to examine educational materials, workplace interactions, media content, and public discourse to identify and challenge racial biases. They aid in policymaking, educational reform, media analysis, and community engagement by providing empirical evidence on how racial inequality is constructed and perpetuated through language and communication. Can these methodologies be combined in research? Yes, combining CDA and ethnography of communication can provide a comprehensive analysis of both the textual, written or spoken content, and contextual, social and cultural settings, aspects of discourse. This holistic approach enhances the understanding of the complexity of race as it is experienced and manifested in various societal domains. What role does language play in the construction of racial categories according to CDA? In CDA, language is not merely a means of communication but a powerful tool that constructs social realities. Language shapes and is shaped by societal structures, helping to form and reinforce racial categories through narratives, word choices, and framing in discourse. How do researchers apply the ethnography of communication in studying racial issues? Researchers immerse themselves in communities to observe and record communication practices. They analyze how racial issues are discussed in different contexts, such as in family gatherings, educational settings, or during public events, to understand how racial identities are constructed and communicated. What challenges do researchers face when using these methodologies in CRT? Challenges include the subjective interpretation of data, the complexity of disentangling language from its cultural and social contexts, and the potential biases of researchers themselves. Ethical considerations in representing voices from marginalized communities also pose significant challenges. How do findings from CDA and ethnography of communication impact societal views on race? Research findings can influence public opinion and policy by providing detailed, nuanced understandings of how race is talked about and enacted in everyday life. They can help challenge stereotypes and prejudices in public discourse, leading to more informed and equitable social policies.